watching Primetime. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. Let's take a look at the top headlines. Vijay Mallya seeks the court's approval to sell frozen assets worth 13,900 crore rupees in an attempt to settle dues owed by the now defunct Kingfisher Airlines. RBI says bad loans at Indian banks are poised to rise to the highest since 2000. The Financial Stability Report adds that bad loan ratio of 11 banks are under prompt corrective action may rise to 22.3% by March 2019. As GST turns 1, the government will step up enforcement actions to curb tax evasion. CBIC chairperson says recent arrests of tax evaders will be a deterrent for others. And rising trade tensions weigh on investor sentiment. The Nifty gives up early gains as Tata Motors and RIL slump. Volatility index hits a 1-week high. Well, fugitive Indian businessman Vijay Mallya is making another attempt to present his side of the story and plead innocence. Mallya said he has written to Prime Minister Modi and Finance Minister Arun Jaitley in 2016 on the Kingfisher saga but received no response. In a media statement, Mallya also said he will continue to make every effort to settle dues with PSU banks. All right, so what's Vijay Mallya's game plan? Why has he spoken out after 2 years and said pretty much the same things? Does it make a difference to the cases against him? To speak on this, I'm joined now by top lawyer Satish Maneshinde. Thank you so much, sir, for speaking with us here at Bloomberg Quint. It's a detailed statement, and he, of course, includes the letter he's written in 2016 to Prime Minister Modi and Arun Jaitley. Most of his arguments are the same, though in his latest statement, he does reiterate that he wants to sell his frozen assets to pay back. Do you think that the statement is going to help him in any way legally in the case ongoing in the United Kingdom?
Well, I don't know the legal implications of his offer in the courts. But, if you see the Indian scenario, there are, $18 billion worth of assets which have gone bad. The banks have been making efforts to settle all the dues. In such a situation, they are not in a position to recover even 50% of the loans, principal amount of the loans, which was given by them to all the business houses. Now, the bankruptcy law has crept in, the insolvency law has crept in, the other efforts are being made to recover all the losses which the banks are sustaining. In such a situation, when Vijay Mallya has come forward to settle by selling his assets, which are worth $2 billion, which is equivalent to almost 14,000 crores. Why are the banks shy of settling with him? Principally because I've seen all around the years, for the last 5 years, that the banks have been settling at 50% of the principal amounts. So here is a person who is making an offer, a written offer. Is it not a discriminatory, manner in which Vijay Mallya is being treated? I understand that Dr. Vijay Mallya is living a king's life even now when the Indian courts and the enforcement agencies are after him. But why are banks not coming forward to accept his offer? The offer that he has made of $2 billion is enough to settle 100% of his dues as they were when it was raised, including the interest amount if one were to consider.
On the face of it, it seems like a fair point, but is it really as simple as that? Let me ask that question to KTS Tulsi, senior advocate in the Supreme Court, who's also joining us on this discussion. Mr. Tulsi, welcome to the show. I hope you've heard most of what Satish Maneshinde said. But the point he's making is that today Vijay Mallya is publicly saying that I'm ready to pay back, let me sell my assets. On the face of it, it seems like bankers should jump at the offer to recover their money.
Yes, in fact, what he is saying is that even at that time, 2 years ago, he made this offer in written letters to the Prime Minister and to the then Finance Minister. The question is, if he has offered to pay and if he has indicated that there is a property which can be put up for sale and can recover 1.5 times of the amount which is said to be due, then why was this not accepted? Why is the government adopting different standards for different clients? After all, this is a clear law and procedure that if you can recover, the whole purpose is to recover as much money as you can, but you don't need to kill the goose. As the government seems to have killed his brand and not reacted to his offer, forcing him to flee. And when there are other industrialists whose dues have been rescheduled and whose dues have been considerably rescheduled to almost 50%, why is the policy not transparent and uniform? It raises a very important question. That can we say that you show me the face and I'll show you the law? The law must be uniform. The law must be certain. The law must be clear. And it should be universally applied. This raises a very serious question with regard to the manner in which the whole issue has been mishandled by the government, if what Mr. Vijay Mallya says in his letters is true.
Well, he starts by talking about how the previous UPA government mishandled entire aviation policy, which led to his airline tanking. That's where he begins his letter to the Prime Minister in 2016 from. So important to put that into context. Just to look at the two parts of this case, of course, there's the civil case where Vijay Mallya owes banks money. He has a different version of how much. The other point is that there are a large number of cases registered against him, and Satish Maneshinde, he's been charged with fraud, with criminal conspiracy by the CBI, the ED is investigating him, SFI is investigating him. There are numerous court orders standing for him to appear, and he has chosen not to. Can he today legally sit in the United Kingdom and say, oh, everything's been so unfair to me, unless he comes back here and faces the due process of law?
Well, forget the cases. Vijay Mallya made this offer in 2016, even before the investigations were proceeding. He made the offer even before he left India and made a written offer to the chairman of the State Bank of India that he was willing to settle 5,500 crores or about 6,000 crores, which was equivalent to about 85% to 90% of the principal amount. And I know that there are several reported cases, including Nikhil Merchant's case, where in the Supreme Court, the proceedings of criminal nature were quashed because he had agreed for a settlement with the banks. So the question of CBI and ED coming in the picture does not arise, because in similar cases, the Supreme Court has crossed the criminal proceedings. One person has offered to make a settlement because this is not something which is affecting the society per se, but between two entities, the bank and a corporate. And a corporate whose assets are seized, which are available in India, are being offered for sale and setting the dues under the supervision of a Supreme Court retired judge or a High Court retired judge. Why is this offer not being taken to the government? Now look at the case of one Mr. Bangu. I remember that I had appeared in the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court accepted our contention that the assets which were seized to the tune of about 700 crores were sold to settle dues worth about 490 crores. So if this is a precedent set for the Supreme Court, why are the banks not jumping upon these cases and settling these cases? Dr. Mallya, when he left India, there was no criminal case pending against him. And only after he refused to come back to India, the CBI and the Enforcement Directorate had gone hammer and tong, registering and making all kinds of charges. Whether those charges are capable of being proved in a court of law is a different matter. But first of all, one has to see that a corporate which was given loans worth about 6,000 crores has come forward. Dr. Mallya doesn't have to take the entire responsibility of the entire corporate, but because he had offered personal guarantees, because he has assets, he has come forward to say that even properties which are attached, even shares which are attached in the High Court, even properties which are attached with the ED should be made available for settling the dues of the banks. Why is the Enforcement Directorate, which did not do anything in a number of cases under investigation, allowed the assets to be sold? Why are they objecting to it?
Mr. Tulsi, do you agree? And also we have to look at the context, because the Enforcement Directorate has moved a Mumbai court asking for Vijay Mallya to be prosecuted under the new Fugitive Economic Offenders Act, which would allow them to attach all of his assets as well. Retrospectively, he can also be tried under this. Do you agree that if he's willing to pay, all else should be forgiven and forgotten? Forget about all the other cases. Remember, he's also being charged with diversion of funds which he has borrowed from banks.
No, the question is, insolvency code has come into operation. The whole purpose of insolvency code was that you should be able to shut shop. Businesses can go bad, but if the business suffers losses, it doesn't mean that you are a criminal. And whatever is possible to be recovered must be recovered. The entire effort should be recovery of money rather than prosecution and hounding of people. So it can't be that...
Mr. Tulsi, why should the same not be applied then to Nirav Modi? Tomorrow, Nirav Modi will come and say that, oh, this is all a big confusion, I'll pay back, and all must be forgiven.
No. Nobody is saying forgiven. There are criminal allegations of criminal frauds which are being made against him. So the question is, if in 2016 Vijay Mallya made this offer to the government, question is, what was government's reaction? Or is the government to react only for their own cronies? Why can't we have a uniform policy with regard to settlement of dues? And if the property is available and is being made available to the government for sale, you can more than satisfy the entire dues, which are to the tune of 9,000 crores. This property was worth about 14,000 crores or more. Now the question is this true or not? We have no means of knowing whether this is true and what line was adopted by the government. Did they inquire into the offer that was being made, and did they react? Did they convey to him that it needs to be improved or anything? The question is that we must have a uniform policy for being able to recover money which have been lent to the business organizations. First priority is recovery of money, even if it's 50%. You recover it for the nation. And don't start killing the goose. So I don't know what the true facts are.
All right.
It will all depend on the true facts.
Well, we have one version, a reiterated version from Vijay Mallya today. KTS Tulsi says, don't kill the goose. In this case, the bird seems to have flown the coop. But we'll have to wait and see if his offer made once more is taken up by Indian authorities. Thank you so much, KTS Tulsi and Satish Maneshinde, for joining us on this conversation. The Reserve Bank of India has warned that bad debts at Indian banks are set to climb to a near two-decade high. In its financial stability report, the central bank also said that public sector banks are more prone to frauds. Vishwanath Nair sums up the key takeaways.
The RBI's financial stability report, a report which looks at how banks have performed and how they will be performing in the coming year based on certain estimates, points out that the banking system's gross NPA ratio could worsen up to 12.2% by March 2019 from about 11.6% back in March 2018. This estimate is based on a baseline, a base case scenario wherein the current macroeconomic conditions should continue for the rest of the financial year, and thereby these estimates would change if there are any changes within the macroeconomic space. What the RBI points out in its report is that if the macroeconomic conditions were to worsen, then for the banking system, the overall gross NPA ratio could be as bad as 13.3%, which is considerably high. Talking about the capital position of the banks, and because that is important in reference to the stress on bank books, the capital position of the banks could worsen up to 12.8%, the capital adequacy ratio for the banking system. This number currently, as of March 2018, stands at about 13.5%. Again, this is based on a base case scenario. On a worst case basis, the capital adequacy ratio for the banking system could drop up to 11.5%. Remember that this number is very close to about the 11.25% that the RBI requires these banks to maintain under the Basel III norms. The RBI, as part of a study, also looked at banks which are under prompt corrective action and those outside of the prompt corrective action framework, and how they have performed over the year and how their performance is likely to pan out over the next financial year. In its study, the RBI points out that banks which are under PCA and who have considerable restrictions on the way they can use the capital, on the kind of companies that they can lend to, and on the kind of expansion plans that they can implement, these PCA banks could see their capital base reduced to 6.5% by March 2019 from about 10.8% in March 18. For banks outside the PCA framework, again, the performance could worsen. It could reach, the capital adequacy ratio could reach up to 10.6% by the end of this financial year from 12% currently. Again, these two numbers are on the basis of a base case scenario, which means that if the macroeconomic conditions could worsen over the current financial year, we could see these numbers worsen further. In its report, the RBI also pointed out that the insolvency and bankruptcy framework was progressing adequately, and that banks were utilizing it more to deal with the stress on their books. Overall, while the rate of operational creditors filing cases is high, the cases filed by financial creditors have also been increasing, which shows that banks largely in India are using the insolvency and bankruptcy framework to ensure that the stress on their book is adequately dealt with.
All right, that's all the time we have on Primetime. But on Primetime Debate, up next, we're talking about Modi Care, the Ayushman Bharat initiative. It's become an interesting situation because the Indian Medical Association, the largest association of doctors, is questioning the rates that the Ayushman Bharat team has set up, saying it's too low to really give quality care to individuals. Let's see how this all pans out. We have the top guys who are actually moving this policy forward on the show today. Vinod Kumar Paul, he's member Niti Aayog and spearheading the entire Modi Care initiative. I have the CEO of Ayushman Bharat Mission, Indu Bhushan, with me, as well as Vinod Kumar Monga from the Indian Medical Association. So we'll hear all sides of the stories up next.